It always lags on that first second. Come on, baby.
Bro, nothing's lagging. It's an artistic choice.
Goodness gracious. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to your favorite show on the internet.
The favorite show on earth.
This is Oil Swims. Got some vibes going. Trying to improve it. Still can't figure out how to get that intro video to roll without lagging.
Without those creative spaces.
Oh, it's ridiculous. All right, I'm going to double check the stream, make sure we're going so we don't just talk to ourselves. Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Is it rolling?
We on. We there.
Oh, my
Check it out, guys.
Welcome to Oil Swims. Today we're talking about Paul.
Paul.
Was Paul anti-Torah or pro-Torah?
That's the question.
That's the question of the day.
I want to get my cereal, and I want to get that special toy in the cereal box that answers the question.
Oh, yes. The cereal box toys,
Cheers,
man.
Bro.
Careful not
Over
to...
our computers. Boom.
Yeah, the cereal box toys, man, back in the 90s, those were the deal.
Captain Crunch?
Oh, my gosh. Captain Crunch this day.
Peanut butter.
I love it, but it cuts your mouth up.
It's like it's like the Fun Dip powder that just makes your gums all sensitive.
Yeah, it's like you have to like brush your teeth, but it doesn't help afterwards. It's just so sugary and sharp. It's like, I wonder what it does to your insides.
Oh, I'll bet it shreds them.
Do you think it freezes your pineal gland?
Calcifies it? Yeah.
Just kidding.
Raisin.
Oh my goodness. All right, so the topic at hand today is Paul.
Paul.
Controversial character Paul is.
The Apostle Paul.
And as we get into, you'll see that the Apostle Paul was even controversial in his own time.
Yes.
Going before the council in the Yehudim council
the
in
religious
Jerusalem.
Elite of his people.
Yeah, he was making some people angry.
He was ruffling up the feathers.
He's still making. Man, if Paul is alive and awake currently watching us, I don't know. Do you think you're awake in Sheol?
Oh, man. Oh.
Are you sleeping?
It's the grave.
It's hard to say.
I don't know, because we're in rest, and there's that Old Testament story where Samuel gets like resurrected from the witch at Endor.
That was a weird one.
And so he comes up and he's like, "Did you disturb my sleep? Why did you do that?
Why am I here?"
Yeah.
And he's trying. It was Solomon, right? Or Saul?
Saul, yeah. King Saul was like, "I'm gonna find a medium to bring up Samuel from the grave," and it happens.
Yeah.
And I think it happens specifically for the soul teaching purpose to reinforce what Samuel already said to Saul, which was like, "You're gonna lose your kingdom."
Yeah, and it's funny because Saul's like, I need like someone to talk to me. So he brings him up from the dead, and he's like, "What if Elohim's not talking to you? I'm not going to talk to you either."
Yeah. And the witch at Endor is like, "I see an Elohim coming out." It's the same word, Elohim, in the Hebrew. I see an Elohim coming up out of the grave. One that is dressed in robes or something like that.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's really interesting.
Kind of off topic, but yeah, we're going to get into it today and see the words of Paul for what they are, because I've run into a lot of conversations with people in my world, loved ones who, on both sides, I think the people on both sides don't like Paul some of the time, you know. If you think Paul teaches grace and is against Torah, and it seems to be in disagreement with a lot of the other apostles, when we know that he was checking with the esteemed, which was the apostles. Right. And so it's interesting. Some people throw out Paul, some people love Paul, and we're going to get to the bottom of it today.
Yeah.
So I've prepared, at least for the beginning part of this, to kind of zoom through the background of Paul. Hopefully I can get this
slides
real quick. Oof.
Bow wow.
Sorry, it's stuck in my cloud.
Oh no, that's fine.
It's so funny. It's stuck in my cloud.
20 or like 50 years ago, or even 1,000 years ago, people would be like, "What are you talking about, bro?" It's stuck in my cloud.
Well, they say things that we don't understand.
Oh, that's true.
There's an Elohim coming up. So
it's like the classic human debacle conundrum.
I love it. All right, let me get my screen share going here. I think it's number 4. Yes, sir, the infinite screen.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, can you take it on YouTube?
I'll take a peep. Let's see how we're looking on the YouTube.
How we looking? We got a background up right now.
Okay, I gotta pull it back up. Oil swims. You search for it. You find it.
You'll search and you'll find. If you're watching right now, subscribe.
Yeah.
That looks beautiful.
Perfect.
I wonder if our hopefully we don't block too much of the words, but I'll read them. So I might be blocking some of the title screens. So today, oops, nope, that's not the right.
Wrong button.
Shoot.
If you're a musician, you're gonna hear that and be like, "Whoa, that's clashing."
That is not right, everybody. I need to double check now.
But yeah,
getting used to this.
Paul seems to be taken out of context by a lot of people. And I mean, I'm just in learning mode. So I'm like, what is Paul saying? And I'm trying to understand him, the Apostle Paul.
Yeah, me too. And we did a lot of research for this one.
Yeah.
And we're probably barely on the surface of his teachings because he wrote most of the New Testament.
Yeah.
As I recall.
Yeah, a lot of his letters. And it kind of reminds me of like in our day and age, if we were to encounter an engineer who was working for 40 years in his field, he's a PhD, maybe he has 2 PhDs in engineering, and he writes a little letter or a little booklet about engineering, but he's speaking the engineering lingo, the PhD level lingo. Right. And we just read it and we're like, oh yeah, like I get it.
I know how to build a spaceship.
A spaceship?
What's a spaceship?
I know how to build a bridge that can hold cars. Like, I don't know. So I think that can be a similar thing with reading the letters of Paul. Not all of them, but I think he's just on another level. Even another level in Torah, and even in 2 Peter, he talks about that.
Peter's like, hey, don't twist the words of Paul. He's in agreement with me. So read what Peter says. What is Peter talking about? And then know that Paul is in agreement with Peter. In fact, Paul is checking all of his letters with Peter, as far as I understand.
Yeah, and his understandings
and James,
of
the brother of Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's like, hey, James, Peter, is what I'm saying lining up with what the Messiah taught? So.
All right. Do you love him or do you hate him? And maybe hate's a strong word. Maybe you're not willing to say hate, but maybe you disagree with him. So we're going to go into the teachings of Paul. This is the question for you to get started. Okay, foundational verses to start off with. We're going to start with Deuteronomy, and there's a reason I'm starting with this. We're going to circle back to this. But Deuteronomy 13:1, when there arises among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and he shall give you a sign or wonder, and the sign or wonder shall come true, of which he has spoken to you, saying, let us go after other mighty ones, which you have not known, and serve them. Verse 3, do not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for Yah, your Elohim, is trying you to know whether you love Yah, your Elohim, with all your heart and with all your being, which is the first and greatest commandment, right?
And that's really interesting that Yah would even allow that. He's testing you, whether to see if you love him.
Yeah,
so,
dude.
Okay, so it sounds like there's going to be things that could potentially trip you up.
Yeah.
So we want to be digging and searching for wisdom and understanding, asking the Father, yo, can I please get some wisdom? And he'll give it to you.
Yeah, trip you up to the point of like signs and wonders,
Whoa.
Like the Antichrist, the lawless one.
Wow.
That will come in the end. Ooh, little sneak in there. Okay, verse 4, walk after Yah your Elohim and fear him and what? Guard his commands and obey his voice and serve him and cling to him. All right, so remember that. The test is if you will guard his commands and obey his voice. Next verse, Malachi 4:4, and this is a warning to us. This is the end times, is the context that Malachi is talking about.
Was Malachi the last prophet before the Messiah?
Well, before John the Baptist, if you consider John the Baptist a prophet.
Hey, okay.
Yeah, remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant, which I commanded him in Horeb for all Israel, laws and right rulings. Remember implies that there was a forgetting, right? There's a forgetting, so remember the Torah of Moses.
Yeah, and for Israel, And we've covered who is Israel in a previous stream. So
Yeah,
you can
go check
go back
that
and
out.
check that out.
Yeah. All right, words of Messiah. So now we're in the New Testament with the messianic words, Matthew 5:17. Do you want to read this one?
Yeah. Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete. Here's a footnote. The law and the prophets is a term used for the pre-messianic scriptures. Continuing on in Matthew 5:18, for truly I say to you, till the heaven and the earth pass away, one yod or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah until all be done.
Till all be done. Okay, we're about to dive into the first words of Paul. This is just a little precursor to what we hope to accomplish throughout this stream. So, till all be done. So a lot of Christians, a lot of my Christian brethren would say that, the Torah was nailed to the cross, and they use this verse. They use Colossians 2:13, and they say, and you who were dead in your trespasses and the uncircumcision of your flesh, I can't say the word.
Try saying that 5 times fast.
Uncircumcision of your flesh, God made alive together with him, having forgiven us all our trespasses, by canceling the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands. This he set aside, nailing it to the cross. See, Josiah, he nailed it to the cross. He nailed the Torah to the cross. And that's what they say. Yeshua said, it is finished on the cross, and he nailed it to the cross. So let's look at the real context of till all be done. All right? Because in the verse, as we read, until heaven and earth pass away, until there's a renewed heaven and a new earth, as it says in Revelation 21:1. And I saw a renewed heaven and a renewed earth. And so this is the end right here. This might even be after the millennial reign, as far as I understand. For the former heaven and the former earth had passed away, and the sea is no more. And I, Yohanan, or John of the island of Patmos. Oops, I went the wrong direction. And I, John, saw the set-apart city, renewed Jerusalem, coming down out of the heaven from Elohim, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband.
Interesting.
And I heard a loud voice from the heavens saying, see, the booth of Elohim is with men, and he shall dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and Elohim himself shall be with them, and be their Elohim.
The word booth is it's an interesting word, but it can also be tent or house, because the Hebrews they were people who dwelt in tents.
Yeah.
There's also the Feast of Booths.
They dwelt in tents around the Mount Sinai. That's what the booths was, right?
Yeah. The tabernacle. They dwelt around the tabernacle as well.
Around God's presence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
God's presence.
So they're saying, like, I saw a booth coming down from the heavens, and that's kind of the context, because they would have understood what a booth was, that kind of house on the go.
Love it. Love the context. And he shall dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and Elohim himself shall be with them, and be their Elohim. Revelations 21:4, and Elohim shall wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, nor mourning, nor crying, and there shall be no more pain, for the former matters have passed away. Here we come to the right verse right here. And he who was sitting on the throne said, see, I make all matters new. And he said to me, write, for these words are true and trustworthy. And he said to me, it is done. I am the Aleph and the Taw, the beginning and the end. To the one who thirsts, I shall give of the fountain of the water of life without payment. All right, so let's go back. Let's continue forward, because there's some good stuff here. This is the end. Remember, this is the end, and the reward is given to someone. And the one who overcomes what? Shall inherit all this. And I shall be his Elohim, and he shall be my son. But as for the cowardly, the untrustworthy. So what's untrustworthy goes back to the commandments. Thou shalt not lie. And the abominable, the murderers, thou shalt not murder. And those who whore, thou shalt not commit adultery. And drug sorcerers. That word right there is pharmakia.
Pharmakia, where we get the word pharmacy. Today. Interesting.
So those of pharmakia are not going to inherit the kingdom of God. And idolaters, also part of the 10 Commandments. And the false false teachers, the false
witness,
false messiahs. Yeah. Their part is in the lake, which burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death.
And that second death is what we're saved from when we believe in Messiah, when we put our faith and trust in him. It said earlier, canceling out the debt in Colossians, by canceling the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands. This he set aside, nailing it to the cross. Yeah, for sure. And we'll get more into that as we continue forward with Paul and the teachings of Paul. So what was Paul actually saying? So we're going to go forward, Colossians 2:13, canceling out, let's go to 14. By canceling the record of debt that stood against us with the legal demands, this he set aside, nailing it to the cross. What did he nail to the cross? The debt. Wow. Right? He didn't nail the Torah to the cross. Yeah. He nailed the debt. So it's like, we abide by a law right now. If I were to get a speeding ticket, for instance, that doesn't cancel out the law. It just, he took my ticket and he paid for my ticket. Yeah. And you go back and exists. Yeah, you're still gonna not run red lights sometimes, and you're still gonna stop at stop signs and the law doesn't disappear, but the debt could disappear if someone pays my ticket for me. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So he didn't cancel out the Torah; he canceled out our debt, and the debt is death, as it says in Romans 6:23. Do you have that? Oh yeah. Romans 6:23 says, "For the wages of sin is death." Second death. But the second and first death, probably. But the favorable gift of Elohim is everlasting life in Messiah Yeshua, our Master. We also got a little footnote here from Romans 8:13. "For if you live according to the flesh, you are going to die. But if you by the Spirit put to death the deeds of the body, you shall live." Excellent. Sheesh. All right, moving on. Let's go back to the words of Messiah, and we'll take it in context because we just read that Revelation verse about what it means for the heavens and the earth to pass away. All right, so do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete. For truly I say to you, till the heaven and the earth pass away, one yod or one tittle shall by no means pass away from the Torah till all be done. Let's continue to 19. Well, I mean, is it okay if we go back? Yeah, let's do it. For truly I say to you, till the heaven and the earth pass away. And the heavens and the earth are still here. Right. I still look up, I see the stars. I still walk on this stationary plane. So that is what it is. Yeah, I love it. So yeah, we just saw the context in Revelation, what that means. It's done when the heavens and earth pass away and he renews all things. Okay, so 5:19, let's continue on of our words with Messiah. Whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men so shall be called least in the reign of the heavens. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the reigns of the heavens. In the reign of the heavens. So take that for what it's worth. Sounds like a hierarchy in the coming kingdom. Yeah. Who will be the greatest? The children. Those like children. So it's like you enter in at a low state and Yah brings you up. There's that parable of the wedding feast. I think that's in Mark 17, I'm guessing. But that one's awesome. It's like some people seat themselves at the highest seats and Yah brings them low, and those who seat themselves at the lowest, Yah brings them up. Matthew 22, 1 through 14. Oh wow, I was way off. I mean, it can be hard sometimes getting all the... Yeah, where's that button?
Let's see if we got the facts straight.
There it is.
Matthew 22, I went to 14. Matthew 22, 1 through 14. And Yeshua responded and spoke to them again by parables and said, "The reign of the heavens is like a man, a sovereign, who made a wedding feast for his son, and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding feast, but they would not come. Again, he sent out other servants, saying, 'Say to those who are invited.'"
No, this is a different one. There's a different feast.
What do you say? What was your point that you were saying?
So there's another parable where he talks about a feast that he invites people to, and some seat themselves high, and then some seat themselves low, and he brings up the low and brings them up high.
Okay.
Let's try to find that one.
Yeah. So
parable of the feast.
The feast. Jesus. Let's see if that comes up. Oh,
Luke. Oh, Great Banquet. I think that's it.
okay. Luke 14, 15 through 24.
Yeah.
Luke 14, 15 through 24.
I like this little side track we're going on right now.
Yeah, this just shows you how much we're still learning. 14, 15. And when one of those who sat at the table with him heard this, he said to him, "Blessed is he who eats bread in the reign of Elohim." But he said to him, "A certain man gave a great supper and invited many.
Yes.
And he sent his servant at supper time to say to those who were invited, 'Come, for all is now ready.' But one by one, they all began making excuses."
No, this is wrong too.
It is?
We'll get there in another stream.
It's okay. What was your point?
That what the Torah does in our lives, and maybe we'll get there eventually, is the Torah, what it does is it humbles you and makes you submit to the ways of Yah, which makes you the lowest in this life, right? A servant of all. What did Jesus model? He was a servant leader, right?
Yeah.
He was a servant to all.
He washed his taught one's feet.
Yeah, he made himself low.
Yeah.
And in making himself low, he was made great not by like when we make ourselves low, we submit, right, to Yah.
Yep.
We're not making ourselves great. And if we think we're going to be great in the heavens, we won't be. Right?
Yeah.
And so when we're brought low, who brings you high? It's Elohim.
When we can see in Psalms 22, 26.
I want to find that.
The meek one, yeah, give it a search. The meek ones do eat and are satisfied. Let those who seek him praise Yahweh. Let your heart live forever. So when you're meek, when you're humble, when you let others go, when you put others before yourself, that's what he's getting at. But the meek ones, the humble ones, shall inherit the earth and delight themselves in plenty of peace. Psalm 37:11. Does that kind of scratch that itch at what you were getting at?
Oh, what did you say? Sorry, I was looking.
Basically, the meek ones will inherit the earth.
Yeah. The meek will inherit the...
The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Because and he who loves his life unto death will lose it, but he who loses his life for Jesus' sake will find it. We have to constantly be asking the Father, am I thinking of this? Am I learning in my own strength? Am I on this path in what I think is right, or am I going by what you think is right? And obviously, we were given minds to discern what wisdom is and what is understanding, but our will and our agency can get in the way.
Right. Luke 4. Did you do that one?
No, I was at Luke 14. Maybe it is Luke 4.
Luke 4:17. Is that what I read? Gee.
We can find it.
Oh, we're
later
stuck.
If you want.
7 through 14.
This is how you study.
This is hard, man.
You think, oh, this is what it is. You search it up and you try to find it. Basically, you were.
We'll go back to
this, right?
Yeah, let's get back to what we were doing. Dang it! I'm
That's
so
okay.
bummed.
That's okay.
You're cruising for a bruising, pal.
This is just us swimming, and we're just searching. Sometimes you find the oil, sometimes you don't. That's why we call it oil swims.
Yeah, we're swimming, going deep. This is what happens. You get lost in the depths.
Yep.
All right, let me get back to where I was in this presentation. Words of Messiah, we did that. Whoever then breaks, yep, there we go. Let's go back to whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men, so shall be called least in the reign of the heavens. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the reign of the heavens. Not because of a box ticking thing, but because what the Torah does in your life is it brings you low, makes you a servant of all, makes you a servant of God and a servant of man. And that's why the Torah will make you greatest in the heaven.
Because when we're following the living Torah, who was a servant leader,
yeah,
our lives should start to look like our servant master.
Right, and it's not you who gets you there. It's Jesus, Yeshua. So who is Paul? Who is he?
Who is this guy? Paul. I know a lot of Pauls in my life.
Paul the Apostle.
The Apostle Paul, the emissary Saul, who his name was changed into Paul.
Called to the nations, right? We're supposed to model our lives after him.
Yes.
Because we're of the nations. We're not native born. All right, so go to Galatians 1 through 10. You're going to read most of these, I think.
Sweet.
I don't want to go back and forth from this screen.
No, definitely.
Galatians 1 through 10. We'll just read this all the way through. Here's the main idea. Why did he write to the Galatians? Here's a question.
Shaul, Paul, an emissary, not from men, nor by man, but by Yeshua Messiah, and Elohim the Father, who raised him from the dead, and all the brothers who are with me, to the assemblies of Galatia. Favor to you and peace from Elohim the Father and our Master Yeshua Messiah, who gave himself for our sins to deliver us out of this present wicked age, according to the desire of our Elohim and Father, to whom be the praise forever and ever. Amen. Galatians 1:6. I marvel that you are so readily turning away from him who called you in the favor of Messiah to a different good news, which is not another. Only there are some who are troubling you and wishing to pervert the good...
Look at that word, pervert. They're perverting the gospel.
Wow.
How are they perverting the gospel?
They're wishing to pervert the good news of Messiah. However, even if we, or a messenger out of heaven, bring a good news, quote unquote, to you beside what we announced to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before, and now I say it again, if anyone brings a quote-unquote good news to you beside what you have received, let him be accursed. For do I now persuade men or Elohim? Or do I seek to please men? For if I still pleased men, I should not be a servant of Messiah.
Excellent. So what's he doing? He's saying, who has perverted your gospel? Who has perverted the good news that we brought to you before? And I think that he's doing a throwback. We remember at the beginning of this stream, we read Deuteronomy 13, 1 through 4. That was the first verse we wrote. And he was saying, Yah was saying that if anyone brings you anything, even if they're doing signs and wonders, do not believe them. For Yah, your Elohim, is testing you to make sure you guard his commandments.
Wow.
And so I think that Paul's saying this, whoever's perverting the gospel, even if he is like an angel, right? That's what he's saying.
He goes there.
Don't believe him, because that is not true. Yah, your Elohim, is testing you to make sure you guard what he taught. Yeah. All right. So I think that's a nod to Deuteronomy 13, 1 through 4. Let him be accursed. All right. Galatians 1, 11 through 16.
Yeah. And I make known to you, brothers, that the good news announced by me is not according to man. For I did not receive it from man, nor was I taught it, but through a revelation of Yeshua Messiah. For you have heard of my former behavior in Judaism, how intensely I persecuted the assembly of Elohim of God, and ravaged it. And I progressed in Judaism beyond many of my age in my race, being more exceedingly ardent for the traditions of my fathers. But when it pleased Elohim, who separated me from my mother's womb and called me by his favor to reveal his Son in me, that I might bring him the good news to the nations, I did not immediately consult with flesh and blood, neither did I go up to Jerusalem.
Stop right there.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so he's talking about his time in Judaism, how he became a Pharisee. He was ardent for his tradition from the time of his youth, from the time he got circumcised on the 8th day, and so on and so on. So he's making a distinction right here about tradition, the traditions of men. He was ardent for the traditions of men.
Exceedingly.
Let's look at our Messiah's definition of tradition. Can you turn to Mark 7, 8 through 9?
Yes.
And Yeshua himself, or Jesus, makes a distinction between tradition and Torah. So,
Mark 7, 8 through 9, forsaking the command of Elohim, you hold fast the tradition of men. And he said to them, to the Pharisees, well, do you set aside the command of Elohim in order to guard your tradition?
in order to guard their tradition, they're breaking the Torah. That's what Jesus is saying. And it continues on, and you don't have to read it, but it continues on to talk about how they are allowing people who receive their parents' blessing to give that to the places of worship. And he's saying, no, this is not good.
Yeah,
honor your father and mother. If you take the inheritance that they're giving you and you don't take care of them in their old age, that is going against Torah. That's part of the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
Honor your father and mother.
Wow.
And they're like, it's okay to not take care of your father and mother. Give it to us.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's not good. So you're
Give
ardent
us your
for your
parents'
traditions.
pension.
Yeah.
That's basically what they were saying.
So in context of what Paul is saying, they're ardent for their traditions, but they're breaking the Torah and keeping their traditions. So Paul's dedication to tradition, pre-conversion, go to Philippians 3:4-17.
Yeah. Okay. Philippians 3:4. Though I too might have trust in the flesh. If anyone else thinks to trust in the flesh, I more. He's going to give his credentials of like why he's like the best Jew.
He was. Why do you think Jesus chose him, called him?
Oh, for real? He had to relay like the good news of Messiah to other people who were very in their traditions,
right?
Who were very schooled in their traditions.
Well,
honestly.
personally, I think that Yeshua called him personally because he knew the Torah better than anyone else, any of the disciples.
Yeah. He was top of his class.
He was top of his class.
Continuing on in Philippians 3:5, circumcised on the 8th day, which is a Torah command, of the race of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, according to Torah, a Pharisee, according to ardor, persecuting the assembly, according to righteousness that is in the law, having become blameless. He followed it to a T.
He's saying, I was blameless.
Yeah.
That's hard to say.
He was also probably blameless in the Talmud as well.
Yeah.
But what might have been a gain to me, I have counted as loss because of Messiah. What is more, I even count all to be loss because of the excellence of the knowledge of Messiah Yeshua, my master, for whom I have suffered the loss of all, and count them as refuse. That's the equivalent of the S word. In order to gain Messiah and be found in him, not having my own righteousness, which is of the law, but that which is through belief in Messiah, the righteousness which is from Elohim on the basis of belief, to know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings, being conformed to his death, if somehow I might attain to the resurrection from the dead.
He's saying he was trying to make his way to his own way in the flesh to be resurrected.
In his own works.
Yeah.
My works save me. I can do this.
Yeah. My goodness.
Continuing on, Philippians 3:12. Not that I have already received or already been perfected, but I press on to lay hold of that for which Messiah Yeshua has also laid hold of me. Brothers, I do not count myself to have laid hold of it yet, but only this, forgetting what is behind and reaching out for what lies ahead. I press on toward the goal for the prize of the high calling of Elohim and Messiah Yeshua. As many, then, as are perfect should have this mind. And if you think differently in any respect, Elohim shall also reveal this to you. But to what we have already attained, walk by the same rule. Be of the same mind. Become joint imitators of me, brothers, and look at those who so walk, as you have us for a pattern. For many of whom.
Stop there.
Okay.
So he's saying, I like this verse, become joint imitators of me. Joint imitators of me, brothers, and look at those who so walk as you have us for a pattern. What is he imitating right here?
Who is he imitating?
Yeah, exactly. Who is he imitating? It's Yeshua Messiah, the Messiah. So I don't know if I got that part right up there where he was trying to earn his way to his own resurrection. Did I get that correct?
Let's see.
I might have just inserted my own Talmud there, so check me on that.
Let's see, where
that might have been in the wrong context there. But what he was saying at the beginning, to sum up, is that was, I think, verse 10 or something like that.
Okay.
What he was saying is he was perfect in performing the traditions of his fathers, right?
Oh, okay.
Did we get to the point? Ardent for tradition versus Torah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
You were talking about Philippians 3:6. According to ardor, persecuting the assembly. According to righteousness that is in the law, having become blameless.
Yeah.
So he really did.
He thought he was going to be his own salvation in a sense, but then he had the road to Damascus experience with Yeshua, him saying, "Stop persecuting me."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then he became ardent for Yeshua Messiah, and he's preaching grace for the sins. Even he's saying, "I was blameless, yet I was not perfect as Yeshua Messiah was."
Wow.
I still needed grace from Jesus.
Yeah,
So
he was outwardly righteous, but inwardly he was a whitewashed tomb.
All right, let's continue on. Galatians 1:17. So that was his past. That's Paul's past. He was very knowledgeable. And the disciples knew this.
He had 4 PhDs.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Galatians 1:17 through 2:2.
Galatians 1:17. Neither did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were emissaries before me, but I went to Arabia and returned again to Damascus. Because I think, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so he didn't go right away because he had to remove all the traditions.
Yeah, he had to retrace his steps, go to Arabia where
what's in Arabia?
Is that Mount Sinai?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where the commandments were given.
Yeah,
right?
so he's like, I gotta go retrace my steps and see what do I have right and wrong.
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
I know what that feels like right now.
Yes. Unlearn things. Galatians 1:18, continuing on. Then after 3 years.
3 years.
He was in Arabia retracing his steps for 3 years.
That's a lot longer than me.
For real. Yeah, at least right now.
Yeah.
Like, what are you, 4 months into?
Well,
I mean, Yah he's been preparing us. He prepares his people. Whole lives.
I've been questioning a lot of stuff for a long time, but I haven't found anything to put my thumb on until recently. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Continuing on in Galatians 1:18. Then after 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem to learn from Peter, or Kepha, and remained with him for 15 days. Hey, Peter, is what I'm saying right? Am I thinking about this the right way?
Exactly, yeah.
Continuing on, Galatians 1:19. And I saw no other of the emissaries except Jacob, the brother of the master. And what I write to you, see, before Elohim, I do not lie.
I do not lie.
I do not lie. Then I went into the districts of Syria and Cilicia, and I was still not known by sight to the assemblies of Judah, which were in Messiah.
Wait, stop there.
Okay.
Actually, continue on to 2:2. Sorry.
Okay. But they were hearing only that the one who once persecuted us now brings as good news the belief which he once ravaged. So they were esteeming Elohim in me. Then, after 14 years...
That's a long time. So right now we're at 17 years since his conversion.
Oh my gosh. I honestly haven't really thought about that. That's pretty nuts. Then after 14 years, I again went up to Jerusalem with Barnabas, taking Titus along too. And I went up by revelation, and I laid before them the good news which I proclaim among the nations, but separately to those who were esteemed, lest somehow I run or had run in vain.
Stop. Okay, so don't worry, we'll get to Galatians 2:3. Everybody, all the Christian brethren out there who are like, get to 2:3. We'll get there. We'll get there. All right, so after 17 years, he is still checking himself with the esteemed.
Wow.
To make sure they're in agreement on these things, okay? And that's why Peter, at the end of Peter, he's like, don't twist the words of Paul. He believes what I believe. Right?
Yeah. He's just on another level. He has 4 or 5 PhDs in the Torah, so when he talks, he uses some very deep lingo.
Yes. Okay. So
really quick. I'm sorry. This kind of stood out to me. I've never really realized this in 2:2. And I went up by revelation. I like the kind of more supernatural things where Yah gives people dreams or words, or like he ordains people's steps in a way that's beyond human understanding, and it's like there seems to be some kind of divine intervention.
Yeah.
So this I've just never really realized, and I went up by revelation and laid before them the good news. So he kind of had an understanding that he was to give the good news of Messiah to people. And who knows what that revelation for him in that moment looked like. But I think that's interesting.
Or maybe he's referencing when Jesus revealed himself to him.
Oh, true.
So
yes.
It's 17 years earlier. I mean, that would be a life-changing event.
Oh, for real.
So who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so who is Paul? Knowing what Paul says in his other letters, and in conjunction, so this is my conclusion with all that. In conjunction with the other disciples, who's checking himself with the esteemed, right? Mm-hmm. Helps us check what he actually means by his words. He isn't being hypocritical. So you can compare what he's saying in context with other things that he has said. He's not speaking out of two sides of his mouth. He's putting he's and everything that he teaches, he's doing, I'm sure. I mean, he's a good teacher.
And we can see elsewhere that he's consistent with his beliefs in Torah.
Yep. And we'll get into that. So Acts 24:5 says, "For having found this man a plague, who stirs up this is when he's on trial with the Yehudim, the Jews in Jerusalem. For having found this man a plague who stirs up dissension among all the Yehudim, among the Jews, right, throughout the world, and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes." What's the Nazarenes?
Interesting.
What's a Nazarene?
What is that?
What is that?
I've never known what that is.
Let's get into what this means. Okay, so Paul's a Nazarene, and in fact, he's the ringleader of the Nazarene.
He's getting accused of being the ringleader.
Right.
These people.
Does he deny it? All right, Acts 24:14, "And this I confess to you," this is Paul speaking now, "that according to the way which they call a sect, so I worship the Elohim of my fathers, believing all that has been written in the Torah and in the prophets." That's Paul speaking right there.
He's believing all.
So we know he believes in Messiah, but he also says, so the text there is Exodus 3:15. You want to look that up?
Yeah. "And Elohim said further to Moses, Thus you are to say to the children of Israel, Yah, Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my remembrance to all generations." Wow.
Believing all that has been written in the Torah and in the prophets. All that's written in the Torah and the prophets.
He's in those. He's in that category of all generations.
So let's get more into this Nazarene thing, because I was curious. There's a few places where they're talking about the Nazarenes. I pulled up one, but there's two right here. Letters of Augustine, letters 75 in 404 AD. So this is the 4th century. This is Jerome replying to Augustine, sorry. And then I can't say his name, Epiphanius.
Epiphanius.
Panarian. I think the Panarian is the place. It's not capitalized or something. I don't know what it does. 29. So this is also a letter in 347 AD. This is well esteemed, like, early Christian church apostles, right? All Christians were Nazarenes, according to them. So let's read this. "For this group did not name themselves Christians, or with Jesus' own name, but Nazareans. However, at that time, all Christians were called Nazareans in the same way. So also came to be called Jesseans for a short while before the disciples began to be called Christians at Antioch. But they were called Jesseans because of Jesse, I suppose, since David was descendant from Jesse, but Mary was David's line. This was in fulfillment of sacred scripture, for in the Old Testament the Lord tells David, 'Of the fruit of thy belly shall I set upon thy throne.'" They use not only the New Testament, but the Old Testament as well, as the Jews do. But unlike the previous sectarians, they do not repudiate the legislation, meaning the laws, the prophets, and the books Jews call writings. They have no different ideas, but confess everything exactly as the law proclaims it, and in the Jewish fashion, except for their belief in Christ, if you please.
If you please.
If you please.
He's a little upset.
Yeah, he's pissed off. "For they acknowledge both the resurrection of the dead and the divine creation of all things, and declare that God is one, and that his Son is Jesus Christ. They are trained to a nicety in Hebrew, for among them the entire law," right? Entire law, the prophets, and the so-called writings, I mean the poetic books, Kings, Chronicles, Esther, and all the rest are read in Hebrew, as they surely are by Jews. They are different from Jews and different from Christians, only in the following. They disagree with the Jews because they have come to faith in Christ, but since they are still fettered by the law, circumcision, the Sabbath, and the rest, they are not in accord with Christians. So they're neither like Jews nor Christians in the 4th century. What's up with that?
Yeah, and this guy, he says at the end, they are still fettered. So this guy has an opinion on what following Torah, Sabbath, and the rest are. He thinks that it's a burden.
He's saying it's a burden.
Yeah, because we know that the Torah gives freedom, especially in Messiah.
How does it give freedom?
Yeah, like your neighbor's not going to steal your fruit.
S word.
Yeah. Your neighbor's not going to steal your garden fruit, or your neighbor's not going to come over and try to
or if you lose something, it's going to be returned to you.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about being murdered.
Yeah. In a society where a bunch of people love God and love their neighbor as themselves, what is better than that?
Yeah, that's freedom.
Yeah, that's freedom. You don't have to worry about someone backsliding on you or stealing your identity or something.
So going back to what Epiphanius, I don't know if he's the one writing necessarily, but Epiphanius is saying is that Paul, the apostle, and let's go back to this. Let's see. Whoops.
So basically, these are some early quote unquote church fathers that are writing about the sect of the Nazarenes that Paul was being accused of being the leader of, right?
Right.
That's interesting.
And Jerome is saying, Augustine, Jerome is replying to Augustine. So Letters of Augustine, letter 75. You can read that if you want to. They're also kind of pissed off, and they recognize Paul specifically, and I should have pulled that one up, but I didn't. Paul specifically as a Nazarene.
Research homework project for those watching.
Right, and then Epiphanius is saying not just Paul, but all the disciples were Nazarenes, and they believed both the Torah and in the Messiah. So that's interesting. So just food for thought right there.
Yeah. Extra biblical sources to kind of show that Paul, was he for or was he anti-Torah? Pro-nomian or antinomian?
Right, and we'll get more into that as we continue forward. More supporting verses for what Paul actually believed. And then we'll get into some controversial verses that a lot of my Christian brethren will say to me.
The meat and potatoes.
The meat and potatoes. Let's get through this presentation. Okay, so key phrases of Paul that I found. These are the ones that I found that seem to stand out to me. So, number 1, traditions of my fathers. So when he's saying that, he's saying the rabbinic laws, etc., etc.
The oral law, the Talmud.
Yeah. So I think today the Jews have over 1,000 laws for how to keep Sabbath.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was similar in Jesus' day, and that's why Jesus always was breaking their rabbinic laws.
Yeah.
He didn't break the Torah laws regarding Sabbath, and that's why he's always telling us, the Pharisees, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath.
Yeah.
It's good to do good on the Sabbath. Which one of you would not, retrieve one of your lost sheep out of a hole on the Sabbath, right? And when he sees someone, he's like, I can't help but heal them because they're like a lost sheep.
Oh, wow.
They're like stuck in a hole, and I can't walk past them.
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
I gotta heal their shriveled hand in the name of myself.
Right. I'm just going to ignore this person on the Sabbath, the day of the Lord? That's ridiculous. So the traditions of my fathers means the laws of the Jews that are created on top of the Torah. They created, and like we said, some of those laws contradicted the Torah, like you can give your inheritance to the places of worship, right? And sacrifice rather than supporting your parents in their old age.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not good.
Basically, it was the heavy yoke that Jesus said. The yoke of the Pharisees is a heavy burden, but my yoke is light and easy.
Yep.
Come on, take my yoke upon you.
Another word or things you'll see in the letters of Paul is grace or favor, depending on the translation that you're reading, given by Elohim. So grace and favor means grace is given by Elohim and is the means of salvation. Yes. And the reason we do good works.
Oh, wow.
Right, and I don't think Christians would disagree with that.
Right. Yeah, we do good works from our belief.
We just disagree on what those good works are. Right?
Where's
as
the
far
line?
As I understand. Right. Where's the line?
Where's the line of obedience? Is there a definition to it? That's the question to ask.
All right. What is grace? What is the wages of sin? Romans 6:23.
For the wages of sin is death, but the favorable gift of Elohim is everlasting life in Messiah Yeshua, our Master.
Awesome. So that's grace, right? The favorable gift of Elohim is everlasting life in Messiah, our Master. Acts 15:11.
But through the favor of the Master Yeshua Messiah, we trust to be saved in the same way as they.
So just replace favor with grace, depending on the translation. But through the grace of the Master, Yeshua Messiah, we trust to be saved in the same way as they. All right. Romans 1:5.
Through whom we have received favor and office of the emissary for belief, obedience among all the nations on behalf of his name.
So right now it's a little more complex in this translation, but he's saying we've received favor.
Should we change it?
We've received favor of salvation in order to do good works for his name.
The KJV says, by whom we have received grace and apostleship for obedience to the faith among all nations for his name.
So in the Hebrew mindset, faith and obedience are synonymous. It's like if you believe something, you do it.
Yeah. Your
like
beliefs motivate your actions.
Right.
Wow.
Like if you believe you can lose weight, you're gonna work out. Like if you want to lose weight, the same thing. It's like if you have faith for something, then you do it.
Right.
If you don't have faith for something, you don't do it.
Right.
Right.
And that's why being a light to people is exposing the lies that they're believing, because their beliefs are rooted in lies and they're leading their actions to be detrimental to their own bodies.
Right.
And to their own future salvation.
Totally. And Yeshua says they say one thing and they do another, but their hearts are far from me. Like they say they love me, but their hearts are far from me. If you love me, what? And you could go to 1 John and be like, if you love me,
you'll keep my commandments. 1 John 3. Let's see how. I'm trying to get this memorized. I still don't really know where it is. 1 John. I think it's first. Yeah. Yep. Actually, maybe not. I might have to Google this.
It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, basically,
it's in there.
What 1 John says is, for this is the love of Elohim. If you love Elohim, you'll keep his commandments.
Yeah, cool. I'm right now on the key phrases of Paul still. Another key phrase of Paul. So we just covered traditions of my fathers, which we understand what that means, and Jesus defined that as well. We also have grace and favor. We define that according to the words of Paul in Romans. And there's going to be more. The traditions of my fathers is everywhere in his letters, okay? So under the law is another phrase. And what we know about under the law means penalty of death. And we'll learn more about this as well. But you go to Deuteronomy 11:26 through 28. What does that say?
See, I am setting before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing, when you obey the commands of Yahweh, your Elohim, which I command you today. And the curse, if you do not obey the commands of Yah, your Elohim, but turn aside from the way which I command you today, to go after other mighty ones which you have not known.
So there's a curse. What is that curse? Is the penalty? It's death. We know that from the Garden of Eden and everywhere in the Bible. I don't think anyone would disagree that the penalty of sin is death. Deuteronomy 28:15.
And it shall be, if you do not obey the voice of Yah, your Elohim, to guard, to do all his commands and his laws, which I command you today, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. All the curses were listed right before that in Deuteronomy 20:18.
Right. Romans 6, we've already read Romans 6:23, but the wages of sin is death. And that was the words of Paul. All right, so continuing on with common phrases of Paul. So under the law means penalty of death, and we'll get more into that. Another phrase is freedom in the spirit. and bondage of sin in the flesh. So you hear Paul always talking about spirit and flesh. Spirit and flesh. It's everywhere. You will never, and this is my words here, you will never hear Paul say we have freedom in the flesh. Okay? It's always freedom in the spirit. So what is freedom in the spirit?
Paul doesn't say you can do whatever your flesh wants to do.
No, he does not. He outlines freedom is to walk in his ways, as David says in Psalms 119:44 through 45. You want to read that?
Yeah. That I might guard your Torah continually forever and ever. That I might walk in a broad place, for I have sought your orders.
Another translations for broad place is freedom, that I may walk in freedom, for I have sought your orders. So David's literally saying, like, your Torah, your instruction gives us freedom, gives me freedom. I want to do this forever, not in our own ways. And we are free from the death penalty because of Messiah. So everyone has broken the Torah except who? Yeshua Messiah, Jesus.
He lived
Messiah.
perfectly.
He lived perfectly. And so all of us are doomed to die, not just one death, but also we have hope in Messiah to raise from the dead and not die the second death. So this is summed up beautifully in Romans 8:1 through 7.
There is then now no condemnation to those who are in Messiah Yeshua, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. For the Torah of the Spirit, for the instruction of the Spirit of the life in Messiah Yahushua, has set me free from the Torah of sin and of death. For the Torah, being powerless, in that it was weak through the flesh, Elohim, having sent his own Son in the likeness of flesh of sin, and concerning sin, condemned sin in the flesh, so that the righteousness of the Torah should be completed in us who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the matters of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit, the matters of the Spirit. For the mind of the flesh is death, but the mind of the Spirit is life and peace, because the mind of the flesh is enmity towards Elohim, for it does not subject itself to the Torah of Elohim, neither indeed is it able.
Right, so if you're in the flesh, you're not in subjection to what? The Torah, his instruction.
Wow.
So if you're following his instruction, it is living in accordance with the Spirit. And if you're living in accordance to your own heart, you are living in enmity towards Elohim. So what he's literally saying in Romans 8:1 through 7, he's saying, if you walk by the Spirit, the righteousness of the law will be completed in you. That's what he's saying. Contrast this with Galatians 5:16 through 18.
And I say, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not accomplish the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh, and these are opposed to each other, so that you do not do what you desire to do.
Wait, stop there. And so what's the penalty? The penalty of sin is death, according to everything we've read. Also Colossians 2:14, which was nailed to the cross. The penalty of death was nailed to the cross. Jesus took our payment for us.
Yeah.
Right? And so read,
in Colossians, what is it, 2:14?
Right.
That's where it says that the penalty of sin was nailed to the cross, right?
Right. Yeah.
And let's see, let me get there. Having blotted out that which was written by hand against us, by the dogmas which stood against us, and he has taken it out of the way, having nailed it to the stake, to the cross. Yeah, like I've heard some people say, well, Galatians doesn't say that we're free from under the Torah. I'm getting it mixed up, but because it says we are no longer under the Torah in Galatians. But we can see earlier that it says that we're no longer under the penalty of the Torah,
right,
in Colossians.
Right.
So is it two different things, or is
No.
it the same thing?
the
Is there a
same
consistent message? That's the kind of questions we have to ask, because
Paul's audience knew what he was talking about.
Exactly.
When he was saying these things.
right, we have not been grown up in a context where from ages 4 or 5 to ages 11 or 12 we learned the first 5 books of the Bible inside and out in Hebrew.
We didn't get the milk.
No, we didn't get the milk. And that's
Yeah,
what
man.
that's what there's milk and there's meat. The
Uh-huh.
Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, is what was considered milk.
Totally. Go to Galatians 5:19. Go back to, so we just read, maybe just read 16 through 19 this time.
Yeah, definitely. And I say, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not accomplish the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are opposed to each other, so that you do not do what you desire to do. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under Torah. And the works of the flesh are well known, which are these: adultery, whoring, uncleanness, indecency. He continues to go on.
Yeah, he keeps going. So I just wanted to get that. So he starts to outline, and you can read this, but everything he's talking about is in the Torah. He's saying the works of the flesh are these, and he keeps going. So make sure to read those in your own time. But he's making a distinction between the works of the flesh and the works of the Spirit. What is the works of the Spirit? The works of the Spirit is in the Torah. It is the instruction of Yah, our Elohim. And the works of the flesh are the works of our own desires, which are not good, right?
Yeah.
Only God is good. So, let's go back. So, under the law means penalty of death. Freedom in the Spirit is versus bondage of sin in the flesh. There was also the traditions of our fathers and the word grace and favor. So, those are common phrases of Paul. I'm getting somewhere with this. So, the last one that I wrote down here was circumcision and uncircumcision. So Paul uses circumcision and uncircumcision like constantly, like all over the place. And what you have to understand when he's talking about this, when Paul uses circumcision, you must give context to determine whether he's talking about you being a Jew. Jews, by their heritage, were circumcised, right? So sometimes he says the circumcised, and he's saying the Jews, right?
Yeah. He thinks that you're going to
synonymously.
understand what
Right.
he's saying.
Right. And then sometimes he says Gentiles, or so he says uncircumcised, meaning Gentiles, or those of the nations, right? The sojourners among you who are uncircumcised, who are not circumcised 8 days after being born, as the Jews. So sometimes when he says circumcision and uncircumcision, he's saying Jews and the rest of you.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And
And non-Jews.
Right. So sometimes he means that based on context, and then sometimes he means the physical act of circumcision, as maybe we'll get into today if we have enough time. And in context of this, is it when he says circumcision, he's talking about in the context of, is it for salvation in the flesh,
Yeah.
or are you being circumcised in love and obedience in the spirit? Right.
Yeah.
So that's the context when he's talking about circumcision and uncircumcision. It could mean a couple of different things. So
Yeah.
don't get confused. Don't think it's just the cutting off of your penis flesh.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, and it's hard to see because, oh my gosh, wow! I just had that thought.
We just
flutter away.
Well, we don't have the context of the whole Torah understanding as the Jews did, and as the Gentiles did, or the nations did in that day when Paul is talking about these things. And understand also that most of Paul's teachings is in person. It's not all in the letters, So a lot of these letters have context of Paul being there in person and talking to them.
Yeah.
And so
I mean, he
they have
said,
the context.
"Have I not written to you in vain?
Right.
Or have I not taught you in vain?"
And oftentimes in the context of Galatians, as we'll get into in Acts 15, 1 through 8, because a lot of the teachings of Paul are twisted in the book of Galatians. So hopefully we'll get there today. So read Acts 15, 1 through 18.
And certain men came down from Judah and were teaching the brothers, "Unless you are circumcised according to the practice of Moses, you are unable to be saved."
Unable to be saved unless you're
Salvation.
circumcised.
That's a work of the flesh.
They're literally saying if you don't cut your penis, you cannot be resurrected in into eternal life.
Yeah.
And as we all know, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Okay, so
continuing on.
That's the circumcision party right there.
Continuing on in Acts 15:2. So when Saul and Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and dispute with them, they got into it. They arranged for Saul and Barnabas and certain others of them to go up to Jerusalem to the emissaries and elders about this question. So, being sent on their way by the assembly, they passed through Phoenicia and Samaria, relating the conversion of the nations.
Or the Gentiles.
Yep. The uncircumcised.
Right.
And they were causing great joy to all the brothers. And having arrived in Jerusalem, they were received by the assembly and the emissaries, the apostles, and the elders. And they reported all that Elohim had done with them. And some of the believers who belonged to the sect of the Pharisees, the people who were saying you got to cut for salvation, rose up saying, "It is necessary to circumcise them and to command them to keep the Torah of Moses." So they're saying,
force them.
Physical act and follow Torah at the same time. It's because it's the works that save you is what they're saying.
Well, not just that. It's the traditions of the Jews, which we'll get into as well, which Peter had a hard time with, and a few of the other apostles had a hard time with, where they were saying like they were not assembling with the nations due to this issue. So they were afraid of the circumcision party, which were saying, unless you're circumcised, you cannot gather with us.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is the Talmud law.
Right. It's a law of the fathers, right? It's not in the Torah. Yeah. And so Paul...
Their fathers.
Yeah, as we'll see, Paul gets on Peter's case about this, and he's like, do not make unclean what Elohim has made clean.
Yeah.
He's saying, what are you doing? Like, assemble.
Stop being
with
racist, bro.
Right. Stop that. Yeah. He's saying you can assemble with people who are uncircumcised in the flesh.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Love them.
What good is it to them if they don't choose for themselves? If they don't have the heart circumcision to do it for themselves, how does it benefit them? You know, and hopefully we'll get into that.
Yeah. Continuing on in Acts chapter 15, verse 6, and the emissaries and elders came together to look into this matter. And when there had been much dispute, I just think like, man, they probably got into it.
Yeah.
You know, Peter rose up, and said to them, "Men, brothers, you know that a good while ago Elohim chose among us that by my mouth the nations should hear the word of the good news and believe. And Elohim knows the heart, Elohim who knows the heart bore witness to them by giving them the set-apart spirit, as also to us, and made no distinction between us and them, cleansing their hearts by belief."
No distinction between us and them.
Wow.
Same salvation for both of us.
Wow. Now then, why do you try Elohim, putting a yoke on the neck of the taught ones, which neither our fathers nor we were able to bear?
What's the yoke?
Talmud.
The traditions of the fathers.
Yeah. But through the favor of the Master Yeshua Messiah, we trust to be saved, in this same way as they, the nations. And all the crowd was silent, and they were listening to Barnabas and Paul, declaring how many miracles and wonders Elohim did among the nations through them.
The Gentiles.
And think about that, because we read in Deuteronomy that even if a messenger or an angel or another person
does
comes,
a mighty work,
does a miracle, but it's a different good news. Mm-hmm. But these guys are doing miracles, and it's the same good news.
Yes.
So it lines up. It's consistent.
Yeah.
Continuing on in Acts chapter 15, verse 13. And after they were silent, James answered, saying, "Men, brothers, listen to me. Simon, Peter, has declared how Elohim first visited the nations to take out of them a people for his name. And the words of the prophets agree with this, as it has been written." How far am I reading?
Keep going.
"After this I shall return and rebuild the booth of David, which has fallen down, and I shall rebuild its ruins, and I shall set it up, so that the remnant of mankind shall seek Yahweh, even all the nations on whom my name has been called, says Yah, who is doing all this."
Okay, stop there. Actually, read the next verse. I just saw that.
Acts 15:18. Who has made this known from of old?
From of old. So the prophets oftentimes spoke about how the remnant, the lost sheep of Israel would be found. Who is that? They're talking about the nations, the Gentiles. And James is saying the same thing. Wasn't it prophesied that the nations would be grafted in?
Yeah. The nations who were divorced at Babel.
Oh, my goodness. And we have a whole video on Israel, which you can go back and watch.
Yeah.
And hopefully this gives more context to that. But as we see there, the context this is the context for Galatians. And then after this, they send Paul and Barnabas to the church of Galatia to make sure, what they're teaching there is sound doctrine because of what? The circumcision party. So that's the context of Galatians, as far as I understand. Do you have a different understanding?
The people who are saying your works save you.
Yeah, circumcision saves you. And circumcision is the sign of the covenant, according to the Old Testament covenant, right? If you're circumcised, you're a follower of Elohim, Yah, your creator, who gave you the commandments, and you're following the rest of the commandments. So that was the sign, that was the physical sign that you were being obedient to Yah. It's kind of like baptism for Christians. If you get baptized, that's a sign of covenant to the Christians. And so it's a witness, if people see you be baptized, and then they can hold you accountable according to what? I'm not completely sure at this point, but let's go back to Paul's message. So from after all that, the key phrases of Paul, this is how I read the letters of Paul, and hopefully this helps you. But Paul's message, as far as I understand, is this: that faith in Yeshua Messiah, and this will give context to the more difficult words of Paul as we get into it. Maybe we won't get into it, all of it today, but hopefully we'll get into some of it.
Yeah.
So Paul's message is this: faith in Yeshua Messiah grants us favor or grace in the eyes of Elohim. And Elohim gives us his spirit, convicting us in love to walk in truth. He wants it to be out of our heart to walk in truth. What is truth?
It's his Torah.
Right, his instruction from the beginning. And you'll read this all over in the New Testament. From the beginning, what was prophesied from the beginning, that they would come into this. And then, so faith in Yeshua Messiah grants us favor and grace in the eyes of Elohim, who gives us his spirit, convicting us in love to walk in truth, granting us what? Freedom from sin and its penalty, the second death. So you're no longer under the law. You're no longer under the penalty of sin, which is death. And you are able to walk in freedom. All right? And so this is the instruction of Elohim that was written through Moses and the prophets from the beginning, in which Yeshua accomplished perfectly, which we are instructed to imitate. Jew or Greek, male or female, servant or master, etc. Same gospel for all people from the beginning.
Yeah. Wow.
So great. So that's where I left off with this presentation to get into hopefully what we'll be able to get into today. I need to take a little potty break.
Do it.
Can you are able to entertain the people till I get back?
Yeah, let's see. Let me think about this really quick. So, okay, hello everybody. We're talking about Torah. We're talking about Paul and obedience. What does obedience look like? When you're obeying the Messiah, when you're obeying the Father, it should come out in your actions. So I don't obey to be saved. I obey because I'm saved from the second death and from judgment. And so I think that's beautiful because we don't have to worry, am I doing enough? Because Messiah did what it took to save us from the second death. And so there's a lot here. And it can be kind of overwhelming sometimes looking into what it means to follow the Messiah, what it means to walk as he walked. And so, yeah, it can be a big learning curve, but that's over time. Like I need to learn to trust the journey Because a lot of times I feel like I can just be like, I gotta learn all this stuff yesterday. But
Dude.
but it's like, yo, just slow down, be patient.
Here we are.
Learn how to turn back to Yah, your Elohim.
Dude, for real. For real, dude.
For real, my guy. Babushka.
Oops, this is gonna clash. I accidentally hit the button.
Yep.
I like the phrases.
You're cruising for a bruising, pal.
We're gonna shoot some sacred cows today. Maybe we already have them. Sorry, and maybe we're
cruising for a
maybe
bruising,
we're cruising
pal.
for a bruising, pal.
Get out of here.
I love these sounds.
Get out of here.
Wow.
That's my favorite.
Wow.
I like this
Wow.
one. Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a note going, a shared note, and so we went through the background of Paul, and hopefully a little bit of a key to helping understand the words of Paul as we get into it. Which, I got that spinning wheel right now. That's not good.
Spinning wheel time.
Spinning wheel with keynote.
Spinning wheel with the key. Shout out Blake_Yum on Instagram for making
baby.
the tunes. Wow, they're so good.
All right, so we're going to get into Galatians now. A lot of verses in Galatians, verses that a lot of my friends and family use to say that we don't need to follow the Torah, the instructions that were given from the beginning. But we're going to use this key right here that I have, which is faith in Yeshua Messiah grants us favor and grace in the eyes of Elohim, who gives us his spirit, convicting us in love to walk in truth. So spirit and in truth, as Jesus always says, granting us freedom from sin and its penalty, the second death. All right, so that's our key. That's our key for understanding Paul. All right. I'm going to close out keynote. I'm done with that.
I'm done with that. Get out of here.
Wow. Get out of here.
Get out of here. All right. Where are we at in our note?
Deuteronomy. Under the law equals penalty of sin and death. Is that where you're at? Because you just read your quote, faith in Messiah grants us favor and grace in the eyes of Elohim, who gives us the spirit to walk in truth, which is he instructed us to do.
I think I'm right here. Did Paul follow Torah after his conversion?
That's a good question.
That's a great question.
Did he?
All right, so we're going to dive deep.
Yeah, oil swim time. Find the oil time.
It's time to swim, baby.
Ooh.
What's the verse we have there? Acts 21:17. So this is,
let's see.
there we go.
Acts 21:17. And when he had arrived in Jerusalem, Paul, the brothers received us gladly. And on the following day, Paul went in with us to James, and all the elders came. And having greeted them, he was relating one by one what Elohim had done among the nations through his service. I think it's interesting to think, like, what was done? Like, there's probably some crazy, beautiful things that happened.
My goodness.
Acts 21:20. And when they heard it, they praised the master. And they said to him, "You see, brother, how many thousands of Yehudim, Jews, there are who have believed, and all are ardent for the Torah. But they have been informed about you that you teach all the Jews who are among the nations to forsake Moses, saying not to circumcise the children, nor to walk according to the practices. What then is it? They shall certainly hear that you have come. So do this, what we say to you. We have 4 men who have taken a vow." That's a Nazirite vow.
And Netzar, which means
Oh, wow.
To keep?
Nazirite. To keep,
Yeah.
to watch, to guard.
Yep.
Watchmen. Take them and be cleansed with them. Go through the process outlined in Numbers, is basically what they're saying.
Yeah.
And pay their expenses. So also use your own money to pay for it all, because like it costs money to do the sacrifices, to do this vow, and
Yeah.
yada yada yada, so that they shave their heads, and all shall know that what they have been informed about you is not so, but that you yourself also walk orderly, keeping the Torah.
Yes. You yourself. Oh, so that's verse 25. Right? What verse was that?
That was Acts 21:17 through 24.
So 24. That you yourself also walk orderly, keeping the Torah.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're getting some clicking. It's because my computer's suffering. It's like, "Ugh."
It's like, I'm trying.
So right there it says that Peter does keep the Torah.
Paul.
Paul does keep the Torah. Sorry, I'm thinking Peter because we're about to go there. So 2 Peter verse 3, chapter 3, verse 14 through 17. All right, and this says, I'm going to read some verses now because you've been reading them the whole time.
Yeah, bro.
So then, beloved ones, looking forward to this, do your utmost to be found by him in peace, spotless and blameless. And reckon the patience of our master as deliverance, as also our beloved brother Paul wrote to you, according to the wisdom given to him. As also in his letters, speaking in them concerning these matters, right? So what did he say in 14? Beloved ones, looking forward to this, do your utmost to be found in him in peace, spotless and blameless, according to what? The Torah.
Spotless and blameless, just like our Messiah was, and the spotless and blameless lamb for sacrifices.
Right, and you can read 2 Peter to get more context into that. Okay, so continuing on, verse 16, as also So, sorry, I'll start at 15. And reckon the patience of our master deliverance, as also our beloved brother Paul wrote to you, according to the wisdom given to him, as also in his letters, speaking in them concerning these matters, in which some are hard to understand, which those who are untaught and unstable twist to their own destruction, as they do also the other scriptures. You then, beloved ones, being forewarned, watch, lest you also fall from your own steadfastness, being led away with the delusion of the lawless. All right, so that seems pretty clear to me. Lawlessness is what? Torahlessness. All right, so Romans 2:13. You have that one?
Yeah, sorry, I was not ready. 2:13. Here we go. For not the hearers of the Torah are righteous in the sight of Elohim, but the doers of the Torah shall be declared right.
So that's Paul speaking right there. That's Romans 2:13. Okay, so Paul didn't teach one thing and do another. He didn't teach one thing and teach another either. So he's not speaking out of two sides of his mouth. I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to put the horse before the cart, right? So that you get the right message, you know, because you cannot work yourself to salvation.
Right.
It's only by the right, using the key that we just went through, it's by grace you are saved through faith, right? And then out of that grace that you receive out of your faith, so you have faith, and then that gives you favor, that gives you grace with Elohim to do what? To keep his commandments, okay?
Yeah.
So we're going to continue forward.
Like the best question I think to ask is, what are you motivated by? Are you motivated to be nice and to love people and to, you know, give up a spiritual sacrifice of prayer to Yah? Are you motivated by wanting to be your own savior?
Right.
You know, or are you motivated because you've already been given the freedom? You've already been saved.
Right. Yeah. We're going to get into one here that's been brought up to me a few times. This is Acts 15:20. All right. So now we're getting into the difficult words of Paul. New section here. Getting a lot of popping from
Acts 15:20. Is it cool if I read it?
Yeah, well, let me get there first because I want people to be able to see it.
Yeah.
All right, Acts 15, verse 20 says...
But that we write to them, the nations, but that we write to them to abstain from the defilements of idols, and from whoring, and from what is strangled.
So let's give context to this. Remember we were in Acts before, and they were talking about how the circumcision party was teaching people that you have to keep the law in order to be saved. You have to be circumcised in order to be saved. Okay, so Acts 15:20 comes out of that. Ready? So what are they teaching the nations to do?
Yeah. Abstain from the defilement of idols, and from whoring, and from what is strangled, and from blood. Basically saying don't go to a pagan temple where they do orgies and ritual sex magic and all that stuff.
Right.
There's a lot of footnotes here because there's a lot of explanations, I think, of the nations following after Molech or Asherah.
Right. So what was happening in context of that? And I wish we had more verses to support this, but you can look into it. But Acts 15:20 was that they were defiling themselves with idols, right? And so that's part of the 10 Commandments. The second commandment, from whoring, which is adultery, what is strangled, and from blood, keep yourself from blood. That's also in the Torah, which also is concerning idols. So they would sacrifice to idols in their temples, and they would sleep with whores and that kind of thing. And they're saying, let's start here. Right.
There would be temple prostitutes, and that was a form of worship to other mighty ones.
Right. Strangled. One way of eating meat with blood. Let's continue on though. Acts 15:21. For from ancient generations Moses has in every city those proclaiming him, being read in the congregations every Sabbath.
Wow.
So what they're saying right here is they're saying, hey, for the new believers, the new nation, new Gentile believers, let's have them start here, right? Yeah. Abstain from the temple worship of other gods.
Yeah.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Have them stop going there. And then what? They will read Moses. They will hear from Moses in every city in the assembly.
Yeah. Because you have to understand who you are in order to obey your mighty one.
Yeah, and what is Moses? Moses is the Torah. You know, the law came through Moses from Elohim, from the Word. We also have a whole video on how Yeshua Messiah is the Word made flesh, right? Jesus made flesh. He obeyed the Torah perfectly, and he's saying that Moses will be taught in the assemblies every week, every Sabbath, in every congregation around that. So just keep them from doing other temple worship to other gods, and then that's a good place to start. Okay?
But I think it's really important to note that from ancient generations, Moses has in every city those proclaiming him, being read in the congregations every Sabbath. I think it's important to note that
doesn't happen anymore. That didn't happen with me growing up.
Yeah, yeah, for real. And it's kind of there's a little bit of the modern church that, you know, they meet weekly and they read the Word. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of that. Right. But are we reading Moses? Are we reading the first 5 books of the Bible? Are we connecting them to the prophets? And are we connecting them to the what is it? Brit Hadashah? Is that how you say New Testament in Hebrew?
Right. And so let's get back to this. This is in context of, remember, the circumcision party. So let's get back to Galatians 2:3. All right. So this is the verse that we didn't get to, which I was like, I promise we'll get there. Here we go. Let me get there.
Yeah.
Galatians 2:3 says this. Let's go back. Okay, so
this is a common verse people use to say, like, hey, we don't need to follow. Yeah.
Okay, this is what it says. So this is in context of the circumcision party, but not even Titus, who was with me through Greece.
Though a Greek,
sorry. I read that so wrong. But not even Titus, who was with me, though a Greek, so he's of the nations, right? He's not a Jew, was not even he was compelled to be circumcised. All right, so a lot of Christians say not even Titus was circumcised. Well, let me submit this. He was not compelled to be circumcised. I think he probably was circumcised because he was seeking, just like Paul, to be an imager of Yeshua Messiah. And Jesus was circumcised, so why would Titus not be circumcised? So he was not compelled. What does compelled mean, Taylor?
It means forced. The word in Greek has more of a meaning like of being forced to do something as opposed to choosing to do something.
Right, and how the circumcision party was forcing people to be circumcised is they were saying, you cannot assemble with us unless you're circumcised. And that
because you won't be saved.
Talmudic law.
Shame time.
Right.
You're not circumcised, you're done.
And you can't be saved.
That's a heavy burden.
Remember in Acts they were saying, unless you're circumcised, you can't be saved. Well, that's the context here. And Peter's furious, and they were arguing about this. And Paul is furious, and he's saying, not even Titus, who was with me, though a Greek, was compelled. He was not forced to be circumcised. Doesn't that give new meaning to that verse right there?
Yeah.
And we know that Peter is not against circumcising Greeks.
Peter?
Paul. I keep mixing up the words. I'm so sorry. So we know that Paul is not against circumcising those who are of the nations. We know this because he himself circumcised Timothy. So let's go to Acts 10:28. My goodness. I keep getting lost in all these terminology. Here we go.
Acts 10:28. And he said to them, "You know that a Yehudi man is not allowed to associate with or go to one of another race. But Elohim has shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean."
Oh, whoops. I thought this was the verse about Paul circumcising Timothy. Where is that verse?
It's time for Google.
All right, let's go. This verse 10:28. This
Acts
is so
16.
important. Acts 16.
16:3.
All right, you go there. I'm going to read Acts 10:28 because it's still important.
All right.
He said to them, "You know that a Jew, a Yehudi man, is not allowed to associate with or go to one of another race." So this is concerning the circumcision party. This is what Peter fell into himself because he was afraid. But Elohim has shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean. So the nations are not unclean to assemble with. That's what he's saying. Just because they're not Jews, just because they're not circumcised. All right, so go Acts 16:3.
Yep. Saul, Paul, wished to have this one go with him. And he took him, Timothy, and circumcised him because of the Jews who were in those places, for they all knew that his father was a Greek.
Right, so Timothy, if his father was a Greek, Timothy was also a Greek. He was of the nations. And Paul did a lot of his ministry with Timothy. And Timothy was circumcised by Paul himself. So why would Paul circumcise Timothy if he thought that you should not get circumcised if you were a Gentile? That's interesting. All right, so that's what I think about that.
Yep.
All right, let's continue on through Galatians. There's a lot of verses in Galatians that are challenging for a lot of people in this regard. All right, Galatians. Do you have anything to add to that?
I was thinking, I've heard it said well, we want to win people for the Messiah. And so removing any kind of stumbling block. And so could Paul have circumcised this guy Timothy just to remove a stumbling block from people believing in the Messiah?
Right.
So it's kind of like this thing of, well, he circumcised him so that he could win them to Messiah, which I can follow that logic. But also, is it consistent with everything else in the Torah and in the New Testament?
Right. Well, I also think that Timothy got circumcised even. Maybe there was a reason for that, right? Like you're saying. But also, Paul's not against doing that, And we know from our introduction that Paul did follow Torah himself, and he did teach to follow Torah as well. So to follow Torah would be to get circumcised. That's one of the first. And for everyone out there, circumcision is a lot. Like if you're a Christian brother out there, it's a lot like baptism. And following the law is a lot like baptism. This is how I explain it to my Christian brothers. Like, hey, if you, what's the first thing you do when you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? You get baptized. That's in obedience. That's the first step in your walk towards following Jesus Christ. Jesus got baptized. You should get baptized. Well, what if I said I was a believer in Jesus Christ, yet I refused to get baptized? You're like, hey, do you believe in Jesus? Yes. Okay, you believe in him, so you want to obey him, right? Yes. Okay, so you should get baptized. That's what Jesus says to do.
Yeah.
And what if I was like, nah. Do I actually want to follow Jesus?
Huh.
Would you question whether I was a follower of Jesus at that point?
Yeah, are you obeying what he said?
Right. And so put that in context. Compare that to this. Oh, Journey! You always have to come in at least once.
We got the dog right here. Let's have him say hi.
Hi, Journey.
Okay, go in your bed.
Go away. Right. So that's the context, right? So following the law, that's how I see it as well. It's like, does baptism save you? No. I don't think any Christian would say baptism saves you. Like if you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior.
Some Christians might.
Some might. If you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior and you don't have time and you don't get baptized before you get hit by a car the next day, it's like, are you going to hell? You know,
right, quote unquote.
Yeah. So same idea, I think, here with the Torah and circumcision. So Paul taught Torah. Paul followed Torah. He went back to Arabia. He studied it for 3 years. He shed off his traditions of his fathers, and so that he could have a knowledge of how to teach it. And even 16 years later, he was still checking it with the esteemed, the apostles, the disciples under Jesus, Yeshua, Messiah. All right, so let's go to Galatians 2:16, which says, knowing that a man is not declared right by works of Torah. What does it mean to be declared right? He is not declared right. He is not sinless by works of Torah, because everybody's broken the Torah. We know that. But through belief in Yeshua, Messiah, even we have believed in Messiah, Yeshua, in order to be declared right. So who declares you right? Only God himself. Who can save sins? Only God himself. By belief in Messiah and not by works of Torah are you declared right.
Right.
Because by works of Torah, no flesh shall be declared right. So looking at the key that we went through at the beginning, with Paul, this is easily read. It's easily understood. You cannot be declared right by works of what? He says flesh.
Yeah. Your
flesh cannot save you. Only Yeshua Messiah. And then after you receive that grace, that favor given to God, given by God, then you walk by the Spirit, which freedom. Is in accord with the Torah, the law.
Right. Yeah. And it's a process of sanctification. So it's not like day one, I believe in the Messiah and I'm saved, and now I've got to learn everything. No, you learn it week by week as it's being read on the Sabbath.
Right.
And it's a process of sanctification.
Yeah.
And you slowly incorporate the obedience into your life.
Well, even ask yourself, what is the standard for sanctification? There has to be a standard. Is it not written down? It must be written down.
Yeah.
So Galatians 2:17, this is right after the verse I just read, Galatians 2:16, where he says, because of works of Torah, no flesh shall be declared right. And then immediately he follows it up, and if, while seeking to be declared right by Messiah, we ourselves also are found sinners, so we're found sinners according to the Torah, is Messiah then a servant of sin? Let it not be. For if I rebuild what I once overthrew, I establish myself a transgressor. He's saying if you still try to do it by the flesh, you're going to die. So you have to have faith in Messiah to save you from what you have fallen from, which is the Torah. For through Torah I died to Torah in order to live to Elohim. So he says Torah is I'm dead, right? And in order to live, I believe in Yeshua Messiah.
Wow.
I have died with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Messiah who lives in me. That's verse 20. You can keep going. I mean, I have been impaled with Messiah. I have died on the cross with Messiah, and I no longer live. So my flesh has died, but Messiah lives in me. It's his Spirit, and the Spirit is the works of his Spirit, which is the Torah, which was given by his word from the beginning.
Yeah.
And that which I now live in the flesh, I live by belief in the Son. So he's saying it's not by Spirit alone. He's saying, even though I'm still in this flesh suit, I still do the works of the Spirit, right? Belief in the Son of Elohim who loved me and gave himself for me. It's out of love. Again, you do works of the Spirit through love.
Yeah.
Am I getting everything right there?
I do not set aside the favor of Elohim, for if righteousness is through Torah, then Messiah died for nothing.
Right. It's like if we could be saved through Torah, then there was no reason for Messiah to come. But we know we're saved by the grace of Messiah through faith.
Yes.
We have faith in Messiah.
Yeah.
And because we have faith in Messiah, he gives us grace and favor.
Yeah.
He forgives us the debt of the Torah, which we're transgressors of. But should we continue to sin? Let it not be.
Yeah.
You know?
What happens after you believe? You start to be sanctified and changed and shaped. Your heart starts to be circumcised into the ways of the Creator.
Yeah. And it's once you understand what Paul is saying, when you have that key of like what he means by certain phrases, this is not confusing, guys.
Yeah.
All right, Galatians 3:10. Or who knows? Maybe we'll get stuck on some of these.
For as many as are of works of Torah are under the curse.
What's the curse?
Breaking Torah.
And what does it say in Colossians? The curse is death, right? Of breaking Torah.
That's right.
What does it say in Colossians? What we read before, he nailed it to the cross. So he paid the curse. He died in our place. That was the penalty of the curse. Okay, continue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
For it has been written, cursed is everyone who does not continue in all that has been written in the book of the Torah to do them.
That goes back to Deuteronomy 27. So he's referencing what? The Torah.
Mm-hmm.
Cursed is he who does not establish the words of this Torah, and all the people shall say, Amen!
Yeah. Oh.
All right. And that no one is declared right by Torah before Elohim is clear, for the righteous shall live by belief. Belief in who? Yeshua Messiah.
The living Torah.
This goes back like to Habakkuk. I wonder what this says. See, he whose being is not upright in him is puffed up, but the righteous one lives by his steadfastness.
By his.
By his. Is that God's? It's not a capital H.
Oh, true.
His steadfastness. So it would be like my steadfastness to what? The Torah.
Yeah.
Galatians 3:12, and the Torah is not of belief, but the man who does them shall live by them. So it's like, if you live according to Torah, you will die according to Torah. So Leviticus 18:5. So if you don't put Yeshua Messiah, if you don't put your faith in Messiah, you will die according to what the Torah says. And you shall guard my laws and my right rulings, which a man does and lives by them. I am Yah.
Yep. And we can only live.
Yeah, you can only live
when we follow Messiah, and then do his ways once we believe.
Right.
Because freedom isn't anarchy. Freedom isn't no rules.
Totes. All right. Where do we want to go from here? Okay. So that's an interesting verse. I think I got that backwards. And the Torah is not of belief.
Where you
but Galatians 3:12. And the Torah is not of belief, but the man who does them shall live by them. Okay, so he's not talking about the penalty there. I thought he was talking about the penalty, but he's not. Because in accordance with Leviticus 8:5, you shall guard my laws, my right rulings, which a man does and lives by them. My bad.
Now let's see if we got the facts straight.
All right. So he's saying right there, you should live according to them. All right. Galatians 5:1-6.
5:1-6. Christ has set us free. In the freedom with which Messiah has made us free, stand firm then, and do not again be held with a yoke of slavery. See, I, Paul, say to you that if you become circumcised, Messiah shall be of no use to you. And I witness again to every man being circumcised that he is a debtor to do the entire Torah. You who are declared right by Torah have severed yourselves from Messiah. You have fallen from favor. For we, in spirit, by belief, eagerly wait for the expectation of righteousness.
For in Messiah neither circumcision nor uncircumcision has any strength, but what? Belief working through love. So it's your love for Torah that you do good works. That comes so faith in Yeshua Messiah gives you favor with Elohim, which then you are compelled by love to do his good works.
Yeah.
But here's the key right here, Galatians 5:4. You who are declared right by Torah, you who are trying to earn your salvation according to Torah, have severed yourself from Messiah.
Yeah.
So he's saying you're not putting your faith in Messiah, you're putting your faith in the works of Torah. But you've already failed at that. Yeah. Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Stop doing that.
Yeah.
But your salvation is found in who? Yeshua Messiah.
Yeah. And this in Galatians 5:3, it's a good question to ask. What you were talking about earlier is when he says, "And I witness again to every man being circumcised, that he is a debtor to do the entire Torah." What kind of circumcised is he talking about? Is he talking about a Jew who actually does it for works? Is he talking about someone? I mean, is he talking about a Jew who is circumcising himself as opposed to a non-Jew who is uncircumcised? Or is he talking about the circumcision party who is saying you are saved by your circumcision?
So right now, I think he's using circumcision as a sign of covenant, which was the old covenant in the Old Testament, where if you were circumcised, you are a follower of Torah, and the curses of breaking the Torah are upon you. Is that what you get out of that?
Yeah, I'm just kind of mulling over it and chewing the cud on it, because the whole context is people who are saying you're saved by what you do, and so I'm wondering if this is him just coming against that idea just in brief, because he uses a lot of the words like we were saying. He's speaking on a level, and people twist what he says.
Yeah, and again, he taught he was in Galatia in person, and he was, these people had context to what Paul taught.
Yeah.
And that's why the apostles, like Paul often says, like, have you fallen so far from what I taught you? Why are you not doing what I said you to do?
Yeah.
Why are you believing these perverted gospels? You're not saved through circumcision. That is the traditions of our fathers. He keeps going through these things. And I, a witness again, so Galatians 5:3, let's see. And I, a witness again to every man being circumcised, that he is a debtor to do the entire Torah. So I think he's just referencing, like, those who think if you think you're going to be saved through circumcision, if you're not putting your faith in Messiah, then you're indebted to do the entire Torah.
Yeah, every single thing. Then if you have that perspective, single thing should be consistent with what you're saying. Every single thing should save you.
Yeah, well, in reference to what the Messiah said is, you see these Pharisees, you have to be better than them, right? You have to be better than them. They have all sinned. You have to be perfect at Torah if you seek to be saved according to Torah. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus was resurrected. Why? Because he was perfect.
Yeah.
He did not receive death according to Torah because he kept the entire Torah.
Yeah. He was owed life because he was perfect. But death is owed to people who break the instructions.
All right.
I can see why people would read this and just kind of take it as a lot of people do,
Right.
And it is like Peter says in 2 Peter that people read Paul and misunderstand him because he is speaking the lingo of 4 PhDs.
Right. All right, so let's go. Man, that's all I had in Galatians. We just rocked through these.
Yeah, I mean, we can even do another thing of just reading it straight through and maybe stopping, but like in another stream. But
you had some stuff in this note. What were you wanted to cover before?
This was at the end. Understanding salvation and works helps us navigate this life. Too much works turns into legalism, and too much salvation turns into liberalism. Liberalism meaning loosey-goosey, anything goes. So, how are we saved, and what are we saved from? Through belief in Messiah, we are saved from the second death, the lake of fire, Gehenna. Once we are saved, we will be judged according to our works in the flesh. We'll be rewarded what we do. We're saved, but then what foundation did you build? What did you build on your foundation of salvation?
Right.
Did you build a straw house, or did you build a gold house? Did you build an iron house? And what gets melted by refinement and fire and testing and questioning and judgment? You know?
Maybe we should do a stream that is on that. It's like after salvation, what
happens?
What happens after you're saved?
Yeah, for real. That's a good idea.
Because all throughout the entire New Testament and the Old Testament, occasionally. So the New Testament, there's this reference to the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, the least in the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
What do you want to be in the kingdom of heaven? Do you want to be the least in the kingdom of heaven, or do you want to be satisfying enough to our Creator, Yah Elohim, that He brings you close?
Yeah.
Maybe you're part of the bride selection.
Yeah.
And maybe we should get into that. Like, as a Christian, I used to believe that when you're saved, everyone is given like the same salvation. We just walk through the heavenly gates, and it's like we're all in heaven now.
Yeah.
You know, we're all in the same place. We're all the same status.
Yeah.
It's like, but that's not what the Bible says.
Yeah.
It says it all over the place. The least and the greatest.
Yeah.
The first shall be last. The last shall be first.
Yeah.
And now these are the words of Elohim, Messiah. Our Creator.
Yeah.
You know, the Word made flesh was saying, like, you know, he is we're supposed to imitate and who we're supposed to believe in.
Yeah.
And he's saying that there are different levels within the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
How do you want Yah to see you? How do you want your Elohim to see you? As least or as greatest?
Wow.
You know, that would be an interesting thing to do a stream on.
Yeah. Hey, that's stay tuned for the future. We'll go into that.
But I think we have a lot more to go into the words of Paul. I think we laid a good foundation here. But
definitely.
Yeah.
We scratched the surface. So what foundation did we build on, and what house was on that foundation? We either build a gold palace, Torah, love for Yah, love for neighbor, or we build a straw hut, tainted works through the doctrines of men, muddying of the Torah.
Dirty rags.
Yo. Yeah. Yeah, like our best works are below his lowest standard.
We should read the parable of the talents.
Ooh.
That's where I'm at right now.
That's where you're feeling?
Are you feeling that?
I need to read it to understand. Parable of the talents.
Here, I'll put it
Matthew
up on
25, 14 through 30.
All right, Matthew what?
25.
25.
14. Yeah, the parable of the talents. Is it okay if I start reading it?
Yeah, go for it.
Let's see. For it is like a man going from home, who called his own servants and delivered his possessions to them. And to one he gave 5 talents, and to another 2, and to another 1. Oh, I see what you're saying. To each according to his own ability, and went from home. And he who had received the 5 talents went and worked with them, and made another 5 talents. And in the same way, he with the 2 also, he gained 2 more. But he who had received the 1 went away and dug in the ground, and hid the silver of his master. And after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more talents. I've doubled your talents you gave me. Woo!
Wow.
And his master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy servant. You were trustworthy over a little. I shall set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Wow. He was set over much.
Yes.
Then he who had received 2 talents came and said, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more talents. Beside them, I've doubled them.
Now let's see if we got the facts straight.
Wrong button.
Wow.
Wow. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy servant. You were trustworthy over a little. I shall set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one who had received the 1 talent also came and said, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And being afraid, I went and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. And his master, answering, said to him, You wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I have not scattered seed. then you should have put my silver with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received back my own with my own interest. Therefore take away the talent from him and give it to him who possesses 10 talents.
Get out of here.
For to everyone who possesses, more shall be given, and he shall have overflowingly. But from him who does not possess, even what he possesses shall be taken away.
The interesting thing is, he says, give it to the one who possesses 10 talents. So those who do what the master asks them to do, the one who does not do what was given to him is taken from him and given to the one who was faithful.
Yeah.
Right?
So he gets more anyways.
Shooting some sacred cows right now.
Get out of here.
I don't know if that's it.
You're cruising for a bruising, pal.
That's the one I was looking for.
Well, basically, like the point here is, what are you doing after your belief?
Right.
What foundation are you building on? Because how are you obeying? How are you loving God? How are you loving the people around you?
Yeah.
And how are you being a light? What is being a light defined as?
Right. What's your motivation after salvation? I know for me, growing up, I was like, I know I'm saved. Like, I have assurance that I am saved, right?
Yeah.
You know, I have salvation. I have everlasting life. And then after that, I was doing my best to impress people in the church. You know, for a long time.
By your works?
By my works, according to what? The desires of my flesh.
Your motivation wasn't even for love. It was for love of people.
Yeah, it was for love of people.
I've same thing. I've done that same
I had no understanding that my good works were according to a standard that Elohim had set from the beginning. And they were meant to be done in love and out of fear of who he is. And because Elohim, Yah, our creator, knows our motivation. What motivates you? Well, how are you controlled? It's by your fear, as we've seen in the pandemic and with everything going on in the world today. It's like, well, what do our governments, what do authorities do to control the population? Well, they make them afraid, and then they tell them, hey, we're here to keep you safe, you know what I mean? And God knows that, Yah knows that we're controlled by our fear. And so he's like, hey, don't fear flesh and blood. If you're going to fear anyone, fear me.
You're the one who can kill your flesh and your soul.
Exactly. But the fear in Yah, Elohim, is the best kind of fear because he responds in what? Perfect love.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you have fear in man, they don't respond in love. They respond with dictates, you know, with authority over you and with slavery and force. Because if they're in that position in the first place, it's probably because they don't fear Yah. You know, they're working according to the flesh. Yeah. But Yah, our creator, is like, hey, fear me, and I will respond in perfect love.
Yeah.
And that's like the best deal for us because we're controlled by fear, dude.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So let our acts be controlled by love in accordance with his instruction that was set from the beginning, demonstrated by Yeshua Messiah in the New Testament, which Paul says, be an imitator with me of who? Of Yeshua Messiah, in accordance to what Paul is talking about. And I think we should do more videos on Paul in the future that go through harder verses. I know there's some in Corinthians and Romans, you know, which foods are declared clean and which ones are not. So because
meat sacrifice to idols.
Exactly. We could probably find that. I mean, what time is it? 10:07. We should probably end. We've been going a while. We'll get more into that in future videos. We'll do Paul 2. You know?
Yeah.
Did you have any final thoughts? We kind of maybe got off track with what your thought was.
Honestly,
there. Sorry.
The question, final question to ask is: once saved, how are we to live?
Yeah.
And obviously, what does it mean to be saved?
Yeah.
And then what saves you? Those are all baked in there. But I think a good answer is in obedience to the commandments. That's how we're supposed to live once we're saved.
Well, that's what it says everywhere in the Bible.
Yeah.
If you
living in spirit and in truth, showing our faith by our works, like James says.
Yes, spirit and in truth. So a lot of people think that living by the Spirit is living all wispy and, you know, like ooh, God is asking me to walk over this way, I think. And then like little antennas for the Spirit. But
Yeah.
what it means to walk in the Spirit, as far as I understand, I'm not saying that the Spirit can't tell you to do things that are not specifically pertaining to Torah. But the main goal, if it's not in love of man and in love of God, right, you're probably missing the mark.
For real. And the heart is desperately wicked. Like, we can be swayed. We can think that our motivations are pure, but more likely than not, they're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the Spirit will never lead you to punch someone. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe if they're doing something evil.
Maybe, but
if they're like stealing a child.
Even then, remember they were going to crucify Yeshua, and Peter cut off the guy's ear, and, and Jesus was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, we're not to act in hostility.
You're supposed to turn the other cheek.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, I stand corrected.
You're wrong.
Wow.
James 2:18, but someone might say, "You have belief, and I have works. Show me your belief without your works, and I shall show you my belief by my works."
Wait, let me get there.
Oh, yes. James 2:18. We got the brother of our Messiah talking about what it looks like to have faith.
Oh, I'm on that screen already. Here we go. Okay, James 2:18. Sorry.
Yeah, 2:18. But someone might say, "You have belief, and I have works. Show me your belief without your works, and I shall show you my belief by my works."
You believe Elohim is one. You do well. That goes back to the Torah. You believe Elohim is one. That's the first commandment. Shema. You do well. The demons also believe that and shudder. But do you wish to know, O foolish man, that the belief without the works is dead? Was not Abraham our father declared right by works when he offered Isaac his son on the slaughter place? Well, let's talk about this for a second. Abraham was declared right by what? We've said faith, right? Faith. He was declared right by his faith, but James is saying by his works. Well, according to the Hebrews, belief is obedience. They're synonymous. Faith is obedience. We mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
So James is saying he was declared right by his works.
Yeah.
Obviously,
your works don't save you, but it's just understanding that the motivation behind it. I just think it's super important to understand, why do we follow Torah? Why do we want to walk like Messiah walked?
And that's why the Torah is supposed to... What's the difference between the Old Covenant and the Renewed Covenant?
Where's it written?
Where it's written. It was written on tablets of stone, being written by the Spirit on what? Our hearts.
The tablet of our hearts.
What is your heart? It's where your desire is.
Yeah. It's the garden of your life, what you tend, what you sow, what you reap, what you put attention to.
Those who love the ways of Elohim will reap according to Elohim.
Yeah.
So that might be a good place to end. You have anything else to add to finish?
I got nothing.
Nothing
right now. But yeah, Paul, Torah, Messiah.
He can
faith,
be confusing. He used to
life.
confuse me too, and he still does sometimes. So
I'm still trying to understand all
by
this.
that, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for... Let me change the screen here. Oops, wrong button, everybody. Thanks for watching Oil Swims, where we dive deep and seek that oil.
Let's see if we got the facts
For we are lamps. We're seeking to fill ourselves with His oil, which is according to His instruction to be a light to the nations and everyone in between. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. And maybe we'll get into it next time. More words of Paul.
Yeah.
Episode 2.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Goodbye.
Stay tuned, people.
Let's do the outro. Oh, wait. I got to stop the music first.
Otherwise, it's going to clash.
Oh, it's going to clash nice and good.
Shalom and peace be unto you.
I don't know.